For centuries, the desert had been his prison, grinding even the mighty Alpha King into a trembling shadow of fur and bone. Yet when he begged, "Please, just one drink," the only soul who heard him was a little human girl with dust on her cheeks and no idea she was about to save a legend. And when her tiny flask touched his lips, the world itself seemed to hold its breath, because that one innocent act would bind their fates forever and wake a power the gods thought they'd buried. Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. 3 centuries. 300 years of blistered winds and heat so fierce it turned stone to glass. 300 years of seeing rivers shimmer on the horizon, only to watch them vanish like smoke. 300 years of rain that fell from storm clouds, but burned his throat like liquid fire the moment it touched his tongue. The moon goddess had been thorough in her cruelty. "You shall wander forever," she had declared, her voice echoing across the celestial realm as she stripped him of his ability to shift, to die, to find peace. Thirst unquenched, wolf denied, life without death. All for a crime he had not committed. Kalen had stopped protesting his innocence after the 1st century. The goddess did not listen. The desert did not care. And the curse, the wretched, unbreakable curse, clung to him like a second skin, ensuring that every drop of water in this forsaken wasteland carried her divine poison. He had tried everything. He had dug wells that ran dry the moment his snout touched them. He had caught rain on his tongue, only to collapse as his insides shredded. He had even dragged himself to an oasis once, decades ago, and plunged his entire head beneath the surface. He had woken 3 days later, half buried in sand, his throat more ruined than before. After that, he stopped trying. The desert became his world. The dunes, his prison. The endless sky, his only companion. Until today. Today, something was different. Kalen's nose twitched a weak, trembling movement that sent pain shooting through his skull. But beneath the agony, beneath the familiar sense of scorched earth and his own decay, there was something new. Something alive. He lifted his head with agonizing slowness, each muscle screaming in protest. His vision swam, the world reduced to blurred shapes and dancing heat waves. And there, trudging through the sand like a tiny, determined ghost, was a child. A human child. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 summers old, with sun-darkened skin and hair that had once been braided but now hung in tangled chaos around her shoulders. Her clothes were torn and dust-covered, her sandals barely clinging to her feet. But what caught Kalen's attention, what made his ancient heart stutter in his chest, was the brass flask clutched to her chest like a precious treasure. Water. She was carrying water. Kalen's body moved before his mind could catch up. Instinct, buried beneath centuries of suffering, roared to life. A child was in danger. A child was alone in the desert. A child needed protection. He tried to rise. His legs buckled. His body, weakened beyond measure, refused to obey. He managed to lift his front half before crashing back down, sending up a cloud of sand that made the girl freeze in her tracks. She stared at him with wide, dark eyes. He stared back, panting. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Kalen did something no Alpha King had done in the entire history of his bloodline. Something that would have made his ancestors howl in shame and his enemies laugh in disbelief. He bowed. He pressed his massive snout into the sand and lowered his body as much as his broken form would allow, making himself small, or as small as a creature the size of a cottage could manage. His ears flattened against his skull. His tail, tangled with roots and thorns, lay motionless in the dust. The girl took a hesitant step forward. Then another. Kalen could smell her fear, sharp and acrid, mixing with sweat and the metallic tang of dried blood on her scraped knees. But beneath the fear was something else. Something that reminded him of the warriors he had once commanded. Courage. She stopped a few paces away, close enough that he could see the tear tracks cutting through the dirt on her cheeks, the way her small hands trembled as they gripped the flask. Kalen drew in a shaking breath and whispered, Please, human, just one drink. His voice was a ruin, cracked and hollow, barely more than wind scraping over stones. He wasn't sure she would even hear him. But she did. The girl's eyes went impossibly wide. You, talk. He managed the smallest nod, the movement sending fresh waves of pain cascading down his spine. She blinked rapidly, processing this information with the strange adaptability of children who lived in a world where magic was real but still surprising. Are you gonna eat me? Despite everything, despite the centuries of agony, despite the curse that had reduced him to this pathetic creature, Kalen felt something he hadn't experienced in so long he'd forgotten the sensation. Amusement. If I wished. He rasped, each word a labor. I would not have asked first. The girl considered this with the seriousness of a scholar debating philosophy. Fair point. She took another step closer, her tiny boots crunching against the sand. The sun caught her hair, turning it gold at the edges. Dust clung to her eyelashes like tiny stars. What's your name? She asked. Of all the questions she could have asked, why are you here? What happened to you? Are there more monsters like you? She asked for his name. Something in Kalen's chest, something he thought had died long ago, stirred. Kalen, he whispered. She wrinkled her nose. That's hard to say. I'll call you Kale. Like the vegetable. Easier. If he had possessed the strength, he would have laughed. Instead, a soft wheeze escaped him, close enough. And what is your name, little one? Sapphira. She shifted the flask in her arms, studying him with the frank curiosity of someone too young to understand just how dangerous the world could be. Why are you in the desert? Punishment, he said simply. What did you do? I existed. Sapphira frowned, clearly finding this answer unsatisfactory. She was probably used to punishments that made sense. No supper for talking back, extra chores for breaking vases. Not this. Not eternal damnation for crimes uncommitted. She looked down at her flask, then back at him. You look really thirsty. Kalen closed his eyes. I am. The water here doesn't work? It is cursed. For me. He heard her small intake of breath, felt her move closer. When he opened his eyes, she was kneeling in the sand beside his head, so small and fragile that one careless movement could crush her. That's awful, she said softly. Then, with the confident decisiveness of someone who had clearly made up her mind, she added, You can have some of mine. Kalen's heart stopped. No, he said urgently, or as urgently as his broken voice could manage. You must not. You need it to survive. So do you. Sapphira was already unscrewing the cap, her small fingers working at the seal. And you're way bigger than me, so you probably need it more. My grandma always said we should share with those who have less, even if we don't have much ourselves. Sapphira. Also, she continued, as if he hadn't spoken, you called me little one, which is way nicer than most people. Usually they just yell at me to get out of the way. The cap came free with a soft pop. The scent hit Kalen like a physical blow. Pure water. Clean water. Water blessed by nothing except a child's hands and carried with nothing except desperate hope. No divine poison. No curse. Just water. Kalen's entire body began to shake. His vision blurred, not from pain this time, but from something else entirely. Something hot and unfamiliar that burned behind his eyes. This will not break the curse, he whispered, even as every cell in his body screamed for that flask. Your kindness, it will change nothing. Well, Sapphira said thoughtfully, we won't know unless you try, right? Her logic was ridiculous. Absurd. Built on the innocent belief that good deeds mattered, that kindness could change the world, that a child's water could save an immortal king. He adored it instantly. Sapphira lifted the flask to his mouth, rising on her toes to reach. Her arms trembled with the weight, but her expression was determined. Here, she whispered. Drink. Kalen drank. The moment the water touched his tongue, the world exploded. Light, pure, green, radiant light burst from his body and shot into the sky like a pillar of flame. The sand beneath them cracked, great fissures splitting the earth as if the desert itself was breaking open. The air filled with a sound like thunder, like bells, like the screaming of 1,000 ancient voices all crying out at once. Sapphira stumbled backward, dropping the flask as she fell to her knees, hands clapped over her ears. Kale, what's happening? Kaelin couldn't answer. He was too busy convulsing as centuries of accumulated agony ripped through him all at once. The curse, woven into every fiber of his being, began to unravel. Not breaking, not yet, but loosening. Threads of divine magic snapping one by one, each release sending shockwaves of pain and relief cascading through him. Symbols blazed to life along his fur, ancient pack marks he hadn't seen since the day of his banishment, glowing like constellations being born. His mane of tangled roots writhed and twisted, green leaves unfurling from dead branches. He threw back his head and roared. The sound shook the desert. Sand dunes collapsed. Storm clouds, summoned by nothing except the raw power pouring from him, gathered overhead. Lightning split the sky. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Kaelin collapsed, panting, his body steaming in the suddenly cooler air. Sapphira crawled forward on hands and knees, her face pale beneath the dirt. Did I break you? No, Kaelin gasped, each breath less agonizing than the last. You fed me life. He lifted his head, easier now, so much easier, and looked at her. Really looked at her. The green light hadn't faded completely. It still flickered along the roots in his mane, pulsed in the ancient symbols marking his fur. But the brightest glow came from Sapphira. She hadn't noticed yet. She was too busy checking him over with the concerned efficiency of someone who had clearly tended to wounded things before, probably stray cats or injured birds, not cursed alpha kings, but the principle was the same. Does anything hurt? She asked, pressing her small hand against his snout. Your breathing sounds better. That's good, right? Kaelin stared at her hand. At the soft shimmer beneath her skin. At the ancient magic radiating from her like heat from a flame. Sapphira, he said slowly, his voice stronger now, carrying the weight of terrible understanding. What was your grandmother's name? The girl blinked at the odd question. Grandmother Nesrin. Why? And her mother's name? Grandmother Lila. But she died before I was born. Sapphira tilted her head. Kael, why are you looking at me like that? Kaelin's mind raced, pieces of an impossible puzzle clicking into place. Nesrin. Lila. Names he had heard before, centuries ago, in the old stories. Names from the bloodline of the Waterkeepers, the ancient guardians who could command rivers, summon rain, purify poison with a touch. The Waterkeepers who had vanished from the world 300 years ago. The same time he was cursed. You are not just human, Kaelin breathed. You carry the first wellspring. Sapphira's confused expression deepened. What's a wellspring? Is it like a fancy bucket? It is the source of all water magic, Kaelin said, still trying to process this revelation. The power from which all rivers flow, all rains fall. You are descended from the Waterkeepers. The ones who vanished when. He stopped. When I was cursed. Your family did not vanish by choice, he said slowly. They were hidden. Protected. Kept secret so that no one could use their power. Use it for what? To control the world. Sapphira absorbed this information with the practiced calm of someone who had learned young that life was rarely fair and frequently bizarre. Grandma always said our family was drippy with destiny. I thought she meant we cried a lot. Despite everything, despite the enormity of what he'd just discovered, Kaelin felt that strange amusement bubble up again. This child, this impossibly brave, ridiculously clever child, was making him laugh. Actually laugh. A weak, rusty sound, but real. Sapphira grinned at him, clearly pleased to have cheered him up. Then her smile faltered. Kael, she said quietly. The sand is shaking. He felt it too. A tremor beneath the earth, growing stronger. And with it came a smell, old magic, predatory magic, the kind that hunted and killed and never stopped. Someone had sensed Sapphira's awakening. And they were coming. Fast. Kaelin struggled to his feet, his muscles protesting, but obeying for the first time in centuries. He was still weak, still damaged, but he was standing. That was enough. He positioned himself between Sapphira and the approaching threat, lips pulling back to reveal fangs as long as swords. "Stay behind me," he commanded, and his voice carried the full weight of his ancient authority, the Alpha King he had been, the protector he still was. Sapphira didn't argue. She grabbed her flask and pressed herself against his leg, her small body trembling, but her chin raised defiantly. "What's coming?" she whispered. "Something that wants you. Will you fight it?" Kalen's eyes blazed gold in the gathering darkness. "Little one," he growled, feeling strength he'd thought lost forever surge through his veins. "You gave me water. You gave me life. You gave me hope." The tremors intensified. Shadows rose on the horizon, massive, writhing shapes that moved with unnatural speed. Kalen bared his fangs wider. "And now," he said, his voice shaking the air itself, "I will give you the world." The first creature burst from the sand like a serpent from the depths, a thing of scales and shadow, with too many eyes and jaws that unhinged impossibly wide. It screamed, the sound like metal scraping metal, and lunged. Kalen met it head-on. He was weak. He was damaged. By all rights, he should have been easy prey. But he had spent 300 years surviving in this desert. 300 years learning to fight despite the curse. 300 years refusing to die. And now he had something to protect. His jaws closed around the creature's throat, fangs sinking deep. It thrashed, trying to coil around him, but he'd fought serpents twice this size in his prime. He twisted, using the creature's own momentum against it, and slammed it into the ground with enough force to create a crater. The serpent dissolved into black smoke. But 3 more were already rising from the sand. "Kale." Sapphira's voice was high with fear. "I have them," he snarled, even as part of his mind raced. He couldn't keep this up. Not in his condition. Not against an endless swarm. He needed to think. He needed. One of the serpents lunged past him, going straight for Sapphira. Kalen's world narrowed to a single point. The child. Time seemed to slow. He saw the serpent's jaws opening, saw Sapphira raising her arms instinctively, saw the flask she still clutched glowing with sudden, brilliant light. The serpent hit a wall of water that materialized from nowhere. It exploded on contact, dissolving into mist. Sapphira stood there, eyes wide, water swirling around her in impossible defiance of gravity. Her hands were outstretched, the flask in her grip blazing like a star. I don't," she stammered, staring at the water as if it had betrayed her. "Do not think." Kalen roared, smashing another serpent aside. "Just feel. The water obeys you, use it." "I don't know how." "You already are." It was true. More water was rising from the ground now, from hidden springs deep beneath the sand, answering Sapphira's fear and desperation. It formed a protective circle around her, spinning faster and faster until it looked like a miniature whirlpool. The serpents hissed and recoiled, unable to cross the barrier. But they were adapting, changing. Their forms shifted, becoming less serpent and more smoke, more shadow, things that could slip through water like it was air. Kalen's mind raced. They needed to move. Needed shelter. Needed the curse. The terrible, beautiful realization hit him like lightning. The curse wasn't punishment. It was protection. The moon goddess hadn't banished him to make him suffer. She'd banished him to keep him alive. To keep him hidden. To ensure that he survived long enough to reach this moment, this place, this child. Because only an immortal guardian could last 300 years in this desert. Only someone who couldn't die could be certain to find the last of the waterkeepers. She knew, Kalen whispered, stunned. The goddess knew you would come. What? Sapphira's voice cut through his revelation. Kale, help! The shadows were pressing closer now, testing the water barrier, finding weaknesses. There were too many. Far too many. Kalen looked at Sapphira, this small, brave, impossibly powerful child who had shown kindness to a monster. Who had shared her water without hesitation. Who had, without realizing it, awakened something that had been sleeping for 3 centuries. He looked at the symbols blazing on his fur, the green light pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The curse was loosening. Not broken, but loosening. Which meant he could do something he hadn't done in 300 years. He could shift. Not fully. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe enough. Sapphira, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Do you trust me?" She looked up at him, her small face smudged with dirt and tears, her eyes reflecting the glow of her own magic. "Yes," she said simply. "Then hold on to my fur. Tightly. Do not let go." She obeyed without question, wrapping her small arms around one of the massive roots tangled in his mane. Kalen closed his eyes and reached for the part of himself he'd thought lost forever. The shift had always been as natural as breathing, as effortless as thought. But now, trying to access it through the weakened curse, it felt like trying to tear through steel with his bare hands. He pushed harder. The symbols on his fur blazed brighter. "Come on," he thought desperately. "Come on, you bastard curse break." Something in his chest snapped, not painfully, but like a rope going slack. The curse shuddered. And Kalen changed. Not fully. His wolf form didn't disappear entirely. But his bones reshaped, his body compacted, his massive form compressing into something smaller, faster, more aerodynamic. A form that could run. "Hold on," he roared, and then he was moving. He burst through the circle of shadow serpents like a comet, his newly compressed body eating up ground at impossible speeds. Sapphira clung to his mane, her scream of terror mixing with something that might have been exhilaration. The serpents gave chase, but they were creatures of ambush and overwhelming numbers. They weren't built for pursuit. Kalen was. He ran like he hadn't run in centuries, his paws barely touching the sand, his body a blur of motion. The desert flew past them in streaks of gold and orange, the setting sun painting everything in shades of fire. Behind them, the serpent's screams faded into the distance. But Kalen didn't slow down. Not yet. Because he could feel it now, the truth that had been hidden from him all this time. The curse hadn't just been punishment or protection. It had been preparation. Every century of suffering, every moment of despair, every agonizing second of unquenchable thirst, it had all been forging him into something new. Something stronger. Something that could survive what was coming. Because this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The serpents were just scouts. Just the first wave. Sent by something far more dangerous, something that had been waiting 300 years for the Waterkeeper bloodline to reveal itself. Something that wanted Sapphira. And it was coming. Kalen ran faster. The desert blurred around them as the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the world into twilight. Strange stars began to appear overhead, not the stars of the mortal realm, but the stars of the goddess's domain, watching, witnessing, waiting. "Kale." Sapphira's voice was nearly lost in the wind. "Where are we going?" "Good question." The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. No shelter. No safety. Just sand and... Wait. There. On the horizon, barely visible in the fading light, something jutted from the dunes. Not natural. Too angular, too deliberate. Ruins. Old ruins from a civilization that had existed before the curse. Before the Waterkeepers vanished. Maybe even before the goddess herself descended to this realm. It wasn't much. But it was something. Kalen adjusted his trajectory, angling toward the ruins, his paws eating up the distance. The structure grew larger as they approached not just ruins, but the remains of a massive temple, half buried in sand, its stone pillars reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. He crashed through the entrance just as the last light died, plunging them into darkness. And stopped. His sides heaved as he gulped air, his new form already starting to revert, the curse reasserting itself now that the immediate danger had passed. He felt his bones creak, his body beginning to expand back to its original massive size. Sapphira slid off his back, landing in a heap on the stone floor. For a moment, she just lay there, breathing hard. Then she started to laugh. It was a slightly hysterical sound, but genuine. The laugh of someone who had just survived something impossible and couldn't quite believe it. That was... She gasped between giggles. That was the fastest I've ever gone. Kalen collapsed beside her, his body reverting fully now, growing until he once again filled most of the temple's interior. "Are you injured?" he asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "No." She sat up, checking herself over. "Just scared. And dizzy. Anne." She paused, looking down at her hands. They were still faintly glowing. Kale, what's happening to me? You are becoming what you were always meant to be, Kaelin said quietly. A water keeper. Like your grandmother. Like your ancestors before her. But I don't know how to be one of those. You will learn. How? He looked at her, this small child who had inadvertently awakened ancient powers and broken centuries-old curses, and was now being hunted by things she couldn't name. I will teach you, he said simply. Sapphira's eyes widened. You know how? I am old, little one. Older than these ruins. Older than most kingdoms. I remember when the water keepers walked openly in the world. I remember their power. He paused. And I remember why they had to hide. Why? Because people wanted to use them. To control them. To turn their gift into a weapon. Sapphira was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then, in a small voice, she asked, Is that why those shadow things came after me? Yes. Will they come back? Yes. He expected fear. Expected tears. Expected a child's breakdown. Instead, Sapphira straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and met his gaze with surprising steel. Then we need to be ready. Would you have found that same courage in her place? Kaelin felt something warm bloom in his chest. Pride. For a child he'd only just met. For a human who had every reason to crumble but chose to stand tall. We will be, he promised. But first, you need to eat. And rest. When did you last have food? Sapphira thought about it. Maybe yesterday? Or the day before. It's hard to remember. Kaelin's protective instincts flared. There should be supplies from the caravan. What did you manage to salvage? She held up her brass flask. This. That is all. I was more worried about water than food. The bandits took everything else. Bandits. Of course. That explained the blood on her knees, the tears in her clothes, the haunted look that sometimes crossed her young face. Tell me what happened, Kaelin said gently. And so she did. The story came out in fits and starts. How she'd been traveling with a merchant caravan heading north. How her mother had sent her away from their village when sickness came. How she'd been promised safe passage to her aunt's city. How the bandits had attacked at dawn. How the guards had tried to fight. How she'd hidden in a supply wagon until everything went quiet. How she'd emerged to find everyone gone and the desert stretching endlessly in every direction. I knew I had to keep moving, she said softly. The merchants always said if you stay in one place in the desert, you die. So I started walking. I walked for, I don't know, days maybe? Everything started looking the same. And then you found me. Yeah. She smiled slightly. You looked even worse than I felt. I couldn't just leave you there. Most would have. My grandma wouldn't have. She always helped people. Even when it was hard. Sapphira's expression turned sad. She died last winter. That's why I was leaving the village. There was nothing left there for me. Kaelin understood loss. Understood loneliness. Understood what it felt like to be adrift in a world that didn't want you. I am sorry, he said quietly. Me too. She wiped her eyes. But she'd be happy I helped you. She always said kindness was the most important magic. Your grandmother was wise. She was. Sapphira looked around the darkened temple. Is this place safe? Safer than the open desert. These ruins are old, older than the curse. They might have protections woven into the stones. He shifted, trying to make himself more comfortable. Rest, little one. I will keep watch. I'm not tired. You are exhausted. But, Sapphira. His voice was firm but kind. You have been through more today than most warriors face in a lifetime. Your body needs rest to heal. Your mind needs silence to process. Sleep. I promise nothing will harm you while I draw breath. She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face with that unnerving perception children sometimes had the ability to see through walls adults built around themselves. Okay, she said finally. But wake me if something happens. I will. She curled up against his side, using his fur as a blanket, her small body barely making a dent in his mass. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep. Kaelin watched her, this tiny human who had changed everything in the span of a single afternoon. His mind wandered over the day's impossible events. The water. The awakening. The partial shift. the realization about the curse. It all pointed to one conclusion. The goddess had planned this. Every piece had been carefully arranged. His curse keeping him alive. Sapphira's bloodline kept hidden. The timing of their meeting. Even the serpents attacking, it had all been orchestrated to trigger Sapphira's awakening, to force Kaelin to break through the curse's limitations. But why? What was the goddess preparing them for? As if in answer, the air in the temple shifted. Kaelin's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid. Something was here. But the presence felt different from the shadow serpents. This was colder, more controlled, and achingly familiar. A figure materialized from the darkness, tall and ethereal, wrapped in robes that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. Her face was beautiful in the way mountains were beautiful, ancient, eternal, impossible to look away from. The moon goddess. Kaelin's lips pulled back in an automatic snarl, centuries of resentment flooding through him. "Peace, Kaelin," she said, her voice like silver bells in the darkness. "I am not here to fight you." "Then why are you here?" he growled, careful to keep his voice low enough not to wake Sapphira. "Come to add to my torment? Perhaps another century in the desert? Or maybe you will curse the child too, since she showed me kindness." "I came to explain. 300 years too late." "No." The goddess moved closer, and Kaelin realized she was barely corporeal, more projection than presence. "Exactly on time. Speak your piece and leave." She looked at Sapphira, sleeping peacefully against his side, and something impossibly soft crossed her immortal features. "She is so small. She is stronger than she looks." "I know. I have watched her entire line, generation after generation, waiting for this one. The one who would inherit the full power. The one who would be strong enough to bear it." "Bear what?" The goddess met his gaze. "The restoration of the world's water." Kaelin felt his breath catch. "Explain." 300 years ago, a blight began to spread across the realm. Not in the mortal world, not yet, but in the magical one. The ancient sources were becoming corrupted. The rivers that flowed between realms were turning poisonous. The balance was breaking. What caused it? The void. She said the word with disgust. An entity from beyond the borders of existence. It feeds on life, on magic, on hope. And it had found a way to seep into our world through the water itself. And the Waterkeepers were the only ones who could stop it. But the void knew this. It sent hunters. The shadow serpents you fought today were only the smallest fragment of its forces. So I hid the Waterkeeper bloodline. Scattered them. Weakened their powers across generations to keep them hidden. And me? The goddess's expression turned sorrowful. You were accused of betraying your pack. Of killing your own kin. You maintained your innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. Because I was innocent. I know. Her voice was gentle. The void manipulated events to frame you. It wanted you destroyed because it knew, it had seen across time and probability, that you would be the one to protect its greatest threat. She gestured to Sapphira. It took me years to understand what the void had done. By then, you had already been cursed by my own council, cast out by your own people. I could not undo what had been done without revealing the truth, and revealing the truth would have exposed the Waterkeeper's existence. So you let me suffer. Yes. She didn't flinch from his accusation. I took your suffering and I shaped it into something purposeful. I made you immortal. I stripped you of your ability to shift so you would not be recognized. I ensured you could not die so you would last until this day. And I bound you to this desert, the one place the void's corruption could not easily reach, and I waited. For Sapphira. For Sapphira. The goddess looked at the sleeping child again. She is the culmination of 3 centuries of careful breeding, of power concentrated and refined across generations. She is the most powerful Waterkeeper to ever live. And the serpents? Were the void's response to her awakening. When you drank her water, when the curse began to break, it created a pulse of magic that rippled across realms. The void felt it. And now it knows where she is. Kaelin's protective instincts flared. It will not have her. No, the goddess agreed. It will not. Because you will protect her. Why should I? Why should I care about your plans after what you allowed to happen to me? The goddess met his gaze steadily. Because despite everything I have done, despite the pain I allowed you to endure, You are still here. Still protecting. Still capable of love. She paused. And because the alternative is watching this child die, and every other child in every realm, as the void consumes all water and turns the world to dust. Kaylin was silent for a long moment. Then, what must we do? Journey north. To the Temple of First Waters, where the original wellspring was sealed. Sapphira must perform the restoration, a ritual that will purify all corrupted water and seal the void away permanently. And if we fail? Then the void wins. And everything ends. Simple. Straightforward. Utterly terrifying. How long do we have? Days. Maybe a week. The void is already moving against you. It will send everything it has to stop her from reaching the temple. Then we leave at dawn. The goddess nodded. Then, surprisingly, she knelt, a goddess kneeling before a cursed wolf, and placed her ethereal hand on his head. I am sorry, Kaylin of the Star Bloodline. Sorrier than you can know. When this is over, when Sapphira completes the restoration, your curse will break completely. You will have your freedom. Your life. Your choice of what comes next. And if I choose vengeance against those who falsely accused me, then I will not stop you. She began to fade, her form dissolving into moonlight. Protect her, Kaylin. Not because I command it, but because she needs you. And perhaps you need her too. Then she was gone. Kaylin sat in the darkness, processing everything. A quest. A ritual. A battle against an entity that wanted to consume the world. Just another day in his cursed existence. Except this time, he wasn't alone. He looked down at Sapphira, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that the fate of all realms now rested on her small shoulders. I will keep you safe, little one, he whispered. This I swear. The night deepened. The stars wheeled overhead. And Kaylin kept watch, as he would every night from now until the end, guarding the most precious thing he'd found in 300 years of wandering. Hope. Morning came with the harsh glare of desert sun. Sapphira woke slowly, blinking against the light streaming through gaps in the temple walls. Kale, she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. I am here. His voice was closer to normal now, stronger. The water had done more than just quench thirst, it had begun healing damage he'd thought permanent. She sat up, looking around the ancient temple with fresh eyes. In daylight, she could see the intricate carvings on the walls, images of water flowing, of people with their hands raised to the sky, of a woman who looked almost like her grandmother standing at the center of a great fountain. Who were they? She asked, pointing at the carvings. Water keepers. Your ancestors. This temple was built in their honor, long before they had to hide. Sapphira studied the images, something stirring in her chest. Recognition, maybe. Or destiny calling. Kale, the goddess visited you last night, didn't she? He shouldn't have been surprised. Children noticed everything. How did you know? I felt something. Like the air got colder and warmer at the same time. And you were talking in your sleep. She looked at him with those two knowing eyes. What did she say? Kaylin could have lied. Could have softened the truth. But Sapphira deserved better than that. She said we have to go north. To the Temple of First Waters. Where you will perform a ritual to seal away the thing that's been corrupting the world's water supply. Sapphira absorbed this with remarkable calm. That sounds important. It is. And dangerous? Very. Will there be more shadow monsters? Almost certainly. She nodded slowly, processing. Then, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone far too young to be making such decisions. Okay. When do we leave? You are not afraid? I'm terrified, she admitted. But my grandma always said being scared and being brave aren't opposites. You can be both. She stood, brushing sand from her clothes. Besides, if I don't do this, everyone dies, right? Including me. So might as well try. Kaylin felt that warmth in his chest again. You are extraordinary. She grinned. You keep saying that. I'm starting to believe you. Good. You should. He rose, his body protesting less than yesterday. The curse's grip was definitely weakening. We leave within the hour. But first, we need food. And we need to begin your training. Training for what? For controlling your power. What you did last night, summoning water to defend yourself, That was instinct. Pure reaction. We need to turn that into skill. How long will that take? Normally? Years. But we do not have years. So we will do what we can in the time we have. Sapphira bit her lip. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't do the ritual? Kalen moved closer, lowering his massive head until they were eye level. Then I will find another way. But I do not think that will be necessary. You carry 3 centuries of concentrated power, Sapphira. The wellspring itself flows through your veins. You are more than good enough. She hugged his snout, her small arms barely spanning half its width. Thank you for not leaving me. Thank you for saving me. They held the moment, child and cursed king, bound by water and kindness and something neither could quite name yet. Then Sapphira's stomach growled loudly enough to echo through the temple. Kalen huffed what might have been a laugh. Food first. Then training. Then we run. The next 3 days became a pattern of movement and learning. Kalen hunted at dawn, desert hares, sand drakes, once even a wild goat that had wandered too far from its herd. The meat was tough but nourishing. Sapphira complained at first, used to cooked food from the caravan, but hunger quickly made her adaptable. During their travels north, Kalen taught her everything he could remember about Waterkeeper magic. The water does not belong to you, he explained as they walked, Sapphira riding on his back to conserve her strength. You belong to it. You are part of the same cycle, rain to river to ocean to cloud to rain again. When you call water, you are not commanding a servant. You are asking family for help. That's actually really beautiful, Sapphira said, surprising herself. Your grandmother Nesrin would have said the same thing. The Waterkeepers understood that power without respect leads only to ruin. She practiced constantly. By the second day, she could pull water from her flask and shape it into spheres, cubes, even crude animals that wobbled but held their form. By the third day, she was drawing moisture directly from the air, condensing humidity into usable water. Excellent, Kalen praised as she created a small floating fountain above her palm. Now, can you sense other water sources? Close your eyes. Reach out with your awareness. Sapphira obeyed, her brow furrowing in concentration. At first, there was nothing. Just the hot wind and endless sand. Then, there. Her eyes flew open. There's water. Underground. Maybe 200 paces that way. She pointed northeast. Kalen shifted direction immediately. Well done. That skill will keep us alive in the desert. She'd been right. They found a hidden spring bubbling up through cracked rock, pure and cold and perfect. Sapphira filled her flask while Kalen drank deeply, marveling at how the curse's poison had vanished completely from all water now that Sapphira traveled with him. The child's power was protecting him, purifying everything in her presence. Kale, Sapphira asked that evening as they made camp in the lee of a large dune. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you miss your pack? Your old life. The question hit harder than expected. Kalen was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars emerge. I miss who I was, he said finally. Or who I thought I was. I was proud. Powerful. I led the largest pack in the realm. Warriors followed me into battle without hesitation. He paused. But I was also arrogant. I believed my strength made me invincible. I ignored warnings. Dismissed those who questioned me. And then you were betrayed? Framed. By the void, though I did not know it at the time. It made it appear that I had killed my own beta, my second in command, my friend. The evidence was overwhelming. Blood on my claws. His body found in my territory. Witnesses who claimed to have seen me arguing with him the night before. But you didn't do it. No. But no one believed me. Even those who had followed me for decades looked at me with suspicion and fear. The old pain crept into his voice. The goddess's council debated for 3 days. Then they cursed me. Stripped everything. Cast me into this desert to die slowly over centuries. Sapphira was quiet, processing. Then, I believe you. Those 3 words. So simple. So powerful. Kalen felt something crack inside him, not painfully, but like ice melting after a long winter. Thank you, he whispered. Will you go back? After we save the world? Will you reclaim your pack? I do not know. 300 years is a long time. Everyone I knew is dust now. The pack lands have surely been claimed by others. And I. He trailed off. You're different now, Sapphira finished for him. Yes. That's okay. Different can be good. She curled up against his side, her usual sleeping spot. Besides, maybe you could start a new pack. One that's better than before. Perhaps. But even as he said it, Kalen realized something startling. He didn't want his old life back. He wanted this strange companionship with a child who trusted him absolutely. This purpose. This chance to protect someone who needed him not because he was the strongest, but because he had chosen to be kind when she needed it most. Maybe the curse hadn't destroyed him. Maybe it had been preparing him for something better. On the fourth day, everything went wrong. They'd just crested a large dune when Sapphira suddenly gasped, her hands flying to her head. Kale, something's wrong, I can feel. The sand in front of them erupted. Not shadow serpents this time. Something worse. A void demon. Massive, towering 20 feet tall, its body a nightmare of shifting darkness and exposed muscle. Horns curved from its skull. Eyes like dying stars burned in its face. And when it smiled, revealing rows of teeth like broken glass, Kalen felt a primal terror he hadn't experienced in centuries. Waterkeeper, the demon rumbled, its voice the sound of collapsing stars. The void claims you. It reached for Sapphira with clawed hands the size of wagon wheels. Kalen threw himself at the demon with a roar that shook the desert. His claws raked across the creature's arm, actually drawing blood, black, oily blood that hissed when it hit sand. The demon backhanded him almost casually. The impact sent Kalen flying 20 yards, crashing into a dune with enough force to leave a crater. Pain exploded through his body. Ribs cracked. Vision blurred. But he forced himself up. Had to protect. Kale. Sapphira's scream cut through everything. The demon had her by the ankle, lifting her upside down like a doll. She struggled, tears streaming from her face, water swirling uselessly around her in panicked spirals. Your power is wasted on you, child, the demon hissed. The void will put it to better use. Something inside Kalen snapped. Not his body. Not his bones. Something deeper. The curse. He'd been holding back, afraid that fully breaking it would kill him. But watching Sapphira scream, watching this creature about to steal her away, he stopped being afraid of death. Kalen reached deep inside himself, to the core where the goddess's curse lived, where divine magic had chained his soul for 300 years. And he pulled. The curse screamed. The magic fought him, not wanting to break all at once. But Kalen had spent 3 centuries learning to endure impossible pain. This was nothing. He pulled harder. Symbols on his body blazed like suns. Green light erupted from every pore. The curse shattered, not loosening this time, but breaking completely, fragments of divine power flooding through him in a torrent that should have torn him apart. Instead, it remade him. His body shifted, changed, became something between wolf and man and divine warrior. He stood on 2 legs now, towering 8 feet tall, covered in silver fur that glowed with inner light. His claws extended, wreathed in the same green magic that had bound him. His eyes blazed pure gold, not wolf gold, but god gold. The demon turned, shock registering on its nightmare face. Impossible, it breathed. The curse, you should be dead. I am done dying, Kalen growled, and his voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of suffering transformed into purpose. Let her go. The demon dropped Sapphira. She landed hard but intact and faced Kalen fully. Even freed, you are no match for. Kalen was already moving. He crossed the distance in a heartbeat, his transformed body moving with speed that defied physics. His claws, now weapons of divine magic, raked across the demon's chest, cutting deep. The demon howled, stumbling backward. How? 300 years, Kalen snarled, pressing his attack. 300 years of learning to fight while cursed. While weak. While broken. He slammed into the demon, driving it to the ground. Do you know what happens when that curse breaks? He drove his claws into the demon's throat. I become unstoppable. The demon thrashed, trying to dissolve into shadow to escape. But Kalen's divine-touched claws held it firm. The magic that had cursed him now turned into a weapon. "This is for every year I suffered," Kalen growled, tearing into the demon with methodical fury. "Every day of thirst. Every moment of agony." The demon's form began to collapse, unable to maintain cohesion against such focused divine assault. "And this," Kalen finished, his voice dropping to something almost tender, "is for threatening my daughter." The word daughter surprised him even as he said it. But it felt right. True. He tore the demon's core free and crushed it in his fist. The creature dissolved into black smoke that the wind scattered to nothing. Kalen stood there, chest heaving, still partially shifted, covered in black blood and divine light. The curse was gone. Completely. Utterly. Broken beyond all repair. He was free. And he was dying. The backlash from shattering the curse hit him all at once. His body, held together for centuries by divine magic, suddenly had nothing supporting it. 300 years of accumulated damage came due. His legs gave out. He collapsed, his form reverting fully now, not to wolf, but to something in between, unable to hold any shape properly. Kale. Sapphira was there instantly, her small hands pressing against his chest. "No, no, no, you can't, you can't die now. It's all right." Each word cost him. "You're safe. Don't you dare." Tears streamed down her face. "We're supposed to have forever. You promised." Sapphira. He tried to lift his hand, to touch her face one last time, but he couldn't move. "My daughter." The word broke something in her. "Dad." She pressed both hands over his heart, and suddenly her hands were glowing with brilliant white-green light. "I won't let you die. You're my family. You're all I have." Water began to pour from her hands, not regular water, but something else. Pure wellspring magic, concentrated and purposeful. "I'm a water keeper." Sapphira shouted at the universe, at fate, at death itself. "And water means life." She poured everything into him. Not just magic, but love. Devotion. Hope. Every drop of power the wellspring had given her, she channeled into Kalen's failing body. Kalen gasped as the magic flooded through him. This wasn't like the curse that had been chains. This was freedom. The curse had been pain. This was healing. This was love made manifest. His body began to knit itself back together. Ribs fused. Internal damage healed. The 300 years of suffering washed away like sand in a tide. But more than that, the wellspring was giving him a choice. He could feel it, ancient and knowing, asking him a question. What he wished to be. Not what he had been. Not what the curse had made him. But what he chose to become. Images flashed through his mind. The mighty wolf. The clever man. The hybrid warrior. Each had strengths. Each had purpose. But the answer was simple. "I wish to be whatever my daughter needs me to be." The wellspring laughed, a sound like falling rain and running rivers and ocean's heartbeat. It was delighted with his answer. "Very well." Light blazed one final time, so bright Sapphira had to close her eyes. When she opened them, Kalen was sitting up. He looked different. Still large, taller than any human, broader, with a presence that filled space. His eyes were still golden, still held the wolf's wisdom. His hair was long and silver white, wild like a mane. His features were strong, angular, handsome in a fierce way. He was mostly human now, but with claws that could extend when needed. With teeth just sharp enough to remind you what he'd been. With strength that went beyond normal human limits. He was something new. Something that had never existed before. A water guardian. "Sapphira," he said, his voice deep and warm and alive. "Are you all right?" She stared at him for a heartbeat, then launched herself at him, sobbing. "You died. You actually died. I felt your heart stop and I couldn't. I thought I lost." "Shoo." He wrapped his arms around her, human arms now, able to hold her properly. "I'm here. I'm alive. You saved me. Don't ever do that again. I cannot promise that. If you are in danger, then we fight together. That's the rule now." She pulled back, glaring at him through tears. "No more dying. He laughed full and rich and real. Very well. No more dying. They held each other as the desert wind whispered around them, as the sun climbed higher, as the dead demon's ashes scattered to nothing. Finally, Sapphira pulled back, studying his new face with wonder. You look different. I feel different. He flexed his hands, human hands with retractable claws. The wellspring gave me a choice. Let me become what I needed to be, which is your father, your guardian, your family. He smiled. For as long as you want me. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Forever, forever. She hugged him again, and Kaelin marveled at how perfect this felt. How right. He'd spent 300 years believing he'd lost everything. He'd been wrong. He'd been waiting to find everything. They traveled for 3 more days, covering ground faster now that Kaelin could shift between forms at will. As a wolf, he could run for hours with Sapphira on his back. As a human, he could make camp, prepare food, teach her with hands instead of paws. As the hybrid warrior, he could fight anything that dared approach. The wellspring's gift had made him adaptable. Complete. Free. Sapphira's power grew daily as well. She could now pull water from seemingly nothing, condense clouds into rain, sense water sources miles away. She practiced combat applications too, water whips, ice shards, crushing spheres that could pin down enemies. You are ready, Kaelin told her on the 6th day of their journey. Whatever the temple throws at us, you can handle it. You really think so? I know so. That evening, as they made camp on the northern edge of the desert, mountains now visible on the horizon, Sapphira asked the question he'd been expecting. What happens after? After we save the world and break your curse, oh wait, we already did that part. She giggled, then grew serious again. But what happens after the temple? Do we just go back to normal life? Kaelin shifted to his human form and sat beside her, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. I have been thinking about that, he admitted. I could return to the Packlands. Try to reclaim my territory. Prove my innocence to whoever still lives there. Oh. Sapphira's voice went small. You'll leave then. Is that what you heard? He looked at her surprised. Sapphira, I said I could do those things. Not that I would. But, don't you want your old life back? No. The answer surprised him with its certainty. That life is gone. Those people are gone. And honestly, he smiled. I prefer this life. This family. Her eyes went wide. Really? Really? Your pack now. My pack. My daughter. And I have no intention of leaving you. He paused. Unless you wish to be rid of me once this is over? No. She practically shouted it. No, I want us to stay together. Maybe find a place near a village? Somewhere we can help people? You could protect them, and I could make sure they always have clean water, and she stopped, embarrassed by her enthusiasm. Kaelin pulled her into a hug. That sounds perfect. Really? Really. We will save the world. Then we will find a home. Together. Build a life that is ours, not dictated by curses or duty or ancient destiny. Just us. Just us. A strange little family. A waterkeeper and her wolf father. Sapphira laughed through happy tears. People are going to think we're so weird. Let them. We are awesome. She hugged him tighter. Yeah, we are. They sat together as stars emerged, as the desert cooled, as their future shimmered before them like water in the distance, real now, attainable, theirs to claim. Tomorrow, they would reach the mountains. The day after, the Temple of First Waters. Then Sapphira would perform the restoration, seal the void, and save every realm from corruption. But tonight, they were simply father and daughter, sharing warmth and hope and the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together. And that was more than enough. The temple appeared suddenly, as if the mountain itself had opened to reveal a secret. They'd been climbing for 2 days when Sapphira stopped, her hand shooting to her chest. Kael, do you feel that? He did. A pull. A presence. Something ancient and powerful calling to the waterkeeper in their company. They rounded a bend in the mountain path and there it was. Carved directly into the cliff face, The Temple of First Waters rose like something from a dream. Not built, carved. Every column, every archway, every intricate detail cut from living rock. Water flowed upward along the pillars, defying gravity, creating a cascade in reverse that caught sunlight and threw rainbows across the stone. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. "This is it," Sapphira whispered. "I can feel the wellspring. It's calling to me. Are you ready?" She took a deep breath. "No, but I'll do it anyway." As they approached, two massive stone statues flanked the entrance, ancient water keepers, their faces serene and knowing. The moment Sapphira's foot touched the first step, the temple came alive. Light blazed from every surface. The upward-flowing water began to glow. And a voice, ancient, feminine, layered with power, spoke. "Waterkeeper, you have come at last." "I have," Sapphira said, trying to keep her voice steady. "To enter the Temple of First Waters, you must face 3 trials. Fear, loss, power. Only by conquering all 3 can you reach the wellspring chamber and perform the restoration." Sapphira glanced back at Kaelin. He wanted to tell her so many things. To be careful, to be brave, to remember everything he'd taught her. But in the end, he simply said, "I believe in you." She smiled, that bright, brave smile that made his heart ache, and turned back to the temple. "I'm ready." The temple doors opened without anyone touching them, revealing a corridor of flowing water and dancing light. They stepped inside, and the real test began. The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed the story, you will surely love the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.